الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. We did this. What do we have? So one thing I wanted to mention was we've seen here and there some kind of like subsystems of like things like the Shafi school, for example, being affected by Amal al-Medina or other situations, things like that. It's very important to understand as well that humans are not we are naturally biased, right? We don't mean to be biased, but we're biased, right? We don't think like a machine, right? So one point, I believe it's Maulana Yusuf bin Nouri, I believe, or could have been his Sheikh Maulana Anwar Kashmiri, or could have been another Indo-Pak scholar. He said, if we look at the Sunan, right, like look at Tirmidhi, look at Ibn Majah, look at Abu Dawood, Ibn Jarud, they're all coming from a certain tradition, right? Their shuyukh have certain fatawa. So when they look at a hadith, certain hadith naturally look more sound or more appealing or more interesting or more worth mentioning than others. Does that make sense? Like, so if I'm going to ask you, I'm going to say, hey, I want you to show me, give me a summary, right, of your kid's school, right? Like, show me like 3 things about your kid's school. You are going to actively edit out things that you personally feel are irrelevant, right? It's going to be a subjective, biased selection, right? You're not trying to be biased. You're not trying to mislead anything. But whenever you do iqtisar, whenever you just select some things and leave other things out, you're going to do that based on a certain system. So what does that mean? It means that you cannot but be influenced by your predecessors and cannot but allow that to affect the way that you select things. Does that make sense? So he is our author. He has certain fatwa in his mind. There are certain things in his mind that he's willing to debate. Certain things he's not. Like myself, for example, as a talib ilm in the Shafi school, the default is always the Shafi school, right? So when I'm representing, if I'm talking about comparative fiqh, right, it's just by default is Shafi, So I'm not trying to be Shafi'i. I'm trying to kind of give people a general picture of Islam in general, but it's not going to be the same as if somebody who was his foundation was the Hanafi school or foundation was the Maliki school or something like that. It's just the nature of it, right? Even if you're trying to be balanced and even if you're not trying to show this or show that, and there's no malice in it and there's no ill will and there's no deception. It's just the nature of humans. So that's really important. So he's mentioned this point. Again, I believe it was Maulana Yusuf bin Nouri, could have been somebody else. He said, when you look at these sunan, these people have certain madhahib and certain fatawa in their minds. And so they actively edit out certain other important hadith that could have been mentioned in that chapter, right? Because they think this is not so important, etc. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So in general, never look at a system that is not absolute as absolute. Simple as that. Something that is not absolute, don't look at it as absolute. See that it is not absolute. It is an approach. It is a well-intended, academic, reliable approach, but it's not the approach. Okay. Okay, so it says Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Hadith 107. حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا يزيد بن هارون قال حدثنا حماد بن سلمة عن حكيم الأثرمي عن أبي تميمة الهجيمي عن أبي هريرة عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من أتى كاهنا. Right, this is a very interesting word, Cohen. Who's familiar with the name Cohen? Cohen. Yeah, so that's a Jewish name, right? It's Jewish for kahin. It's the same word. So the word priest and the word fortune teller is the same in Hebrew, which is very interesting, right? Um, this conflation of these two roles and the conflation of what's going on, right? It's pretty interesting. That's a Jewish family name, right? Who are presumably these people were rabbis or something like that. Wallahu alam. Very interesting. Um, I believe Sheikh Hamza Karamani has a lot to say about that. She says, وَمَنْ أَتَى كَاهِنًا فَصَدَّقَهُ بِمَا يَقُولُ أَوْ أَتَى امْرَأَةً فِي دُبُرِهَا أَوْ أَتَى امْرَأَةً وَهِيَ حَائِض فَقَدْ بَرِئَ مِمَّا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ. Right? I.e., so ظاهرا, right? It's not actually kufr though, right? It's not actually kufr. So the point here is the last two things. So anal intercourse is haram, and intercourse, vaginal intercourse while a woman is on a period is also haram. فقد برئ مما أنزل الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. So it doesn't mean that make it kufr, and it's not it's not a divorce or something like that. So this is interesting. So one of these issues, one of the things that the former dhahib do is give you clarity. They put you in a box, that's true. They are more conservative, that's true, but they also give you clarity. So if you step out of the former dhahib, you don't really know what people are saying, right? It's kind of all over the place. Like, what is Amal Ahl Medina? You know, what is the fatwa of Sa'id Musayyib? What is the fatwa of Ibn Abbas? So this issue, if you look in the debates, it's an issue of debate. Anal intercourse, is it halal or not? It's an issue of debate. And Imam al-Shafi'i, like the way he phrases it in the is almost like he's like accepting the debate. It's a legitimate debate, the way he's phrasing it. Um, I believe Nafi' or Ibn Umar, one of the two, allegedly said it was permissible, and it's also ascribed to Imam Malik. You then find later Malikis totally denying that, saying that is not the Maliki school at all. Imam Malik 100% went against that. Ibn Umar said, would a believer ever do that, etc. And so it's very, very important to note that. So just like we have a hadith that's shadh, like this is a hadith, and the hadith is just wahi, it's just off. It's not anything. Similarly, the same thing we have fatwa that are quoted, the Sahabi or Tabi is quoted to have said that, or even did say that. So they either did say that and it's super weak, or they are alleged to have said it and it's totally weak. So what I'm trying to say is when you step out of the form of dhahib and you say, no, come on, guys, let's be more open-minded, you step into this world of mist and you really don't know what's going on. Like, you really don't know what's going on. And you can end up giving fatwa that are totally baseless. And you're trying to just say, look, is it true they have to follow the form of dhahib and nothing else? Well, not really, technically, right? There's no verse in the Quran that says thou shalt follow the form of dhahib, right? It's not like that. So in principle, you can follow any mujtahid. Okay, so if there was a mujtahid that said it, you could follow it, right? But there's an issue there of dabt al-masail, like what is actually being said here. And you will find certain quotes and you realize later on that they're just totally wrong. Just like there are certain narrations in hadith and you realize that's actually totally wrong. It's actually a genuine mistake. And now you're following along with this thing because you're trying to be, um, trying to be kind of open-minded and let things be easier. But it's very, very dangerous. Whenever you step out the form of dhahib, you just know that there is a huge problem with dabt al-masail. What is this person actually saying? And did they even hold that position? Right, so it's an issue. Allahu A'lam. So maybe somebody could have a look. I believe in Tartib al-Madarik by Qadi Iyad. I'm trying to think where else I've seen it. I'm sure in some Maliki fiqh books they're going to have that discussion, right? Where there is this naql of the mas'ala as if it was a riwayah, and then people doing total inkar of it, saying that's absolutely wrong. That is not the Maliki school at all. Allahu alam. Just like Imam Shafi'i, you find in the Rawda and you find the Majmu'. Imam Shafi'i apparently said you don't have to recite behind the Imam, even if the Imam recites quietly. So you're like, what? What are you talking about? So there's issues of, is it the Qadim? Like, do you have to recite behind the Imam if he recites aloud? Is that the Qadim? Is that a position in the Jadid? It's a kind of a debate, but it's very clear that Imam Shafi spoke about reciting the Fatiha behind the Imam, like very, very obvious. So now you come along and ascribe to Imam Shafi a position that you don't have to recite the Fatiha, even if the Imam is reciting quietly. That's really weird, right? That's like a really weird fatwa. So that exists. You'll see these quotes, and they're just like baseless, right? And these things happen. Right? أوكي. حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا وهب بن جرير عن شعبة عن الحكم عن عبد الحميد عن مقسم عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال في الذي يأتي امرأته حائضا قال يتصدق بدينار أو بنصف دينار. Right, and I believe this is wajib in the Hanbali school and Sunnah in the Shafi'i school. حدثنا أحمد بن محمد الشافعي. This doesn't necessarily mean that he's Shafi'i, by the way. Just like when you say Al-Hanafi, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's Hanafi, right? حدثنا الحسن بن علي الحلواني قال حدثنا سعيد بن عامر عن شعبة. So he's basically bringing another chain. عن الحكم عن عبد الحميد عن مقسم عن ابن عباس عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم نحوه. Right, so he's just saying I have the same chain from Shu'bah, right? From Shu'bah. Yeah, so I have another chain going back to Shu'bah. قال شعبة وزعم فلان وفلان أن الحكم كان لا يرفعه. He didn't used to ascribe it to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. فقيل لشعبة حدثنا بما سمعت ودع قول فلان وفلان. قال ما يسرني أن أعمر في الدنيا عمر نوح وإني تحدثت بهذا أو سكت عن هذا. So Shu'bah said, so and so claims that Al-Hakam did not ascribe it to the Prophet ﷺ, i.e. these are the words of Ibn Abbas and not the words of the Prophet ﷺ. فقيل لشعبة حدثنا بما سمعت ودع قول فلان وفلان. Just tell us what you've heard. قال, he said, ما يسرني أن أعمر في الدنيا عمر نوح. I wouldn't want to live as long as Nuh lived, right? وإني تحدثت بهذا وسكت عن هذا, while having had mentioned X without mentioning Y. That's my job. They're like, bro, just forget the details. No, I need to convey the details. This is my job, right? I'm telling you what I have heard from my teachers, but I'm telling you as well, I've heard that others have questioned this. So we need to be very careful, right? Does that make sense? So he's saying like, I can't just ignore that, right? Does that make sense? Everyone's following Muhammad. There's Zafar, Jawad, Ammar. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
this is very much like if you see myself in the in Islam QA, like I'm very, very hesitant. There's some people who are in my Shafi Q&A, like I really don't like them being there because they are not tulab ilm. And when I say something, they infer something, right? Which is dangerous, right? So this is like in my Islam QA, I'm like, I have to give you the whole picture. I can't give you half of the picture, you know? So a sister asked a question, Sheikh, I just became Muslim a week ago. Is female circumcision obligatory? And I say, yes. You know, hang on a minute. Like, what? Can you give me the whole picture? What do you mean by circumcision? Is there a debate on this? Is there this? Is there like? Give me a whole picture. Like, you need to contextualize the question. I'm not saying don't give me the fatwa, but you need to contextualize things, right? That's part of my job, right? Obviously, here, he's, it's on a kind of slightly different level. It's like here, I'm ascribing something to the Prophet ﷺ, but you need to be aware that other people have questioned it, right? This is part of the job of a muhaddith, right? Wallahu alam. And maybe somebody can research this, is maybe look at the ilal of Ibn Abi Hatim, see if there's any issues with this hadith, or ilal Daraqutni, that they question this hadith. So just, type ilal Daraqutni, and then put in yatasaddaqu bi dinar, or or you should find it. Is there an issue with the hadith or not? Allahu alam. Excuse me. So this is the amana of Shu'bah. And so we mentioned in other classes that Shu'bah is arguably the founder of the science of hadith criticism, right? So hadith narration, people narrate hadiths, but hadith criticism, arguably Shu'bah is like the founder, right? I mean, if you look in at the Tadhkirah of Imam al-Dhahabi, he mentions, the Sahaba in general, that, these kind of things of being critical about hadith starts with the Sahaba, of course. But like as a science and as a process, Shu'bah is, he's at a certain stage in history, seeing certain things, and he's doing things really that nobody did before him. And this is of his farasa, his insight, and his wara' in the deen, and his amana, his sense of like, I'm bearing a trust here. It's not a joke. So then he says, قال حدثنا محمد بن زكريا الجوهري قال حدثنا البندار قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن قال حدثنا شعبة بهذا حديث ولم يرفعه. قال عبد الرحمن قال رجل شعبة إنك كنت ترفعه قال كنت مجنونا فصححته. Right, I used to be insane and now I became well again. Right. So could Shu'bah himself have made the mistake? Yes, Shu'bah himself could have made that mistake. حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا عبد الله بن بكر قال حدثنا سعيد ابن أبي عروبة عن عبد الكريم عن مقسم عن ابن عباس أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال يتصدق بدينار أو نصف دينار. So here our author is saying, well, it's true. There's Shu'bah's narrating it in different ways, but look, we have another chain that goes around Shu'bah, right? It skips Shu'bah and it goes straight to Miqsam from Ibn Abbas, that the Prophet said this. Maybe that's weak though. Allahu A'lam. This doesn't have to be correct, right? And he says, حدثنا محمد بن يحيى وأبو جعفر الدارمي قال حدثنا جعفر العون قال أخبرنا هشام بن عروة عن أبيه أن عائشة قالت جاءت فاطمة بنت أبي حبيش إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقالت يا رسول الله إن امرأة أستحاض فلا أطهر أفأدع الصلاة قال لا إنما ذلك عرق وليست بالحيضة فإذا أقبلت الحيضة فدعي الصلاة فإذا أدبرت فاغسلي عنك الدم وصلي. Right, so this is the concept of istihada. Right? حدثنا يعقوب بن إبراهيم الدورقي قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن مهدي عن صخر بن جويرية. Notice there's no shadda. It's not Juwayriyah. It's Juwayriya, right? So fa'il fuway'il. Fuway'il. Fa'ila fuway'ila. There's no shadda, right? So saying it Juwayriya. She's not saying it Juwayriya, right? Fa'il fuway'il. right? It's not فويعيل, right? So جارية, and the diminutive of جارية is جويرية, right? The little girl, right? So his name is Boulder, the son of the little girl, right? And that's probably a man, by the way. So Juwaidia is also a man's name. I have no idea why. I think it's like the pink shirt thing. Men wearing pink shirts.
Yes.
Like I'm so masculine, I can get away with it. Something like that. I don't, you know. I'm not. I honestly I don't understand. So Sakhr, right? Sakhr makes sense. Like it's a tough world. You name your sons tough names. This is of the Jahiliyyah, right? As opposed to Nafi', that's a slave's name. You give him a soft name. So you name your slaves soft names and your sons hard names. But like Umayyah, that means little slave, little female slave. Like I don't understand why. Okay, Alhamdulillah. Yusuf, he's here. قال أحمد da, da, da. So he says, okay, I'm gonna copy this. Copy and I'll pause share. Where are you quoting, Yusuf?
This is from the تعليق على العلل لابن أبي حاتم ابن عبد الهادي.
Okay, Ibn Abdul Hadi. Okay, great. Um, so he says, قال الإمام أحمد حدثنا يحيى عن شعبة ومحمد بن جعفر حدثنا شعبة عن الحكم عن عبد الحميد بن عبد الرحمن عن مقسم عن ابن عباس عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في الذي يأتي امرأته وهي حائض يتصدق بدينار أو نصف دينار. قال عبد الله ibn Ahmad قال أبي. So this is the son of Imam Ahmad said, my father Imam Ahmad said, لم يرفعه عبد الرحمن ولا بهس. قال أبو داود هكذا الرواية الصحيحة. قال دينار أو نصف دينار وربما لم يرفعه شعبة. Right, we saw that. قال أيضا سمعت أحمد يقول قد سئل عن الرجل يأتي امرأته وهي حائض. He said ما أحسن حديثي ما أحسن حديث عبد الحميد. قيل له فتذهب إليه قال نعم. وقد صحح هذا حديث الحاكم أبو عبد الله ابن قطان, right? So who's Ibn Qattan? I think he's Maghribi, but so Ibn Qattan is the Mustadrik on the Al-Ishbili, Abdul Haq Al-Ishbili. So Abdul Haq Al-Ishbili, he has Al-Ahkam Al-Kubra, Al-Ahkam Al-Wusta, Al-Ahkam Al-Sughra. Okay, this is Abdul Haq Al-Ishbili. So a book on Hadith Ahkam. And I believe so it's called, so Ibn al-Qattan, he has the book, Al-Wahm wal-Iham, Al-Wahm wal-Iham. And it's Mustadrak on on the Wusta, I believe, on the Wusta. So he goes through the Wusta and he says, well, Abdul Haq al-Ishbili, you claim that this hadith is sahih. It's not, right? So that's a very important book that's referenced a lot, right? Al-Wahm wal-Iham by Ibn al-Qattan, right? So وقد وهم من حكى الاتفاق على ضعفه. وقال عبد الله بن أحمد في كتاب العلل حدثني أبي أحد حدث سفيان عن عبد الكريم بن أمية عن مقسم, and he mentions the other chain, right? So Allahu Alam, Imam Ahmad believes this hadith to be sahih, right? And this is his fatwa as well, that it's obligatory. Uh, but maybe inshallah we can find more things. What did Ibn Abi Hatim say? Daraqutni. We'll see other things as well. And also, just a side note as well, Ibn Abdul Hadi, he's not that amazing. Um, so like I've seen, we were reading for a while in place of this, in lieu of this class, right? We were reading the Tahqiq, uh, which was Imam Dhahabi's kind of refinement and tweak of Ibn Abdul Hadi's work on Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la's work on hadith to do with comparative fiqh and things like that. Or like, sorry, the different positions in fiqh and the different proofs for them. So I've seen many times Imam al-Dhahabi was kind of like criticizing Ibn Abdul Hadi, like, you're not that amazing. Like you think, you're not really thinking as a proper muhaddith. So that's the picture. Allahu A'lam. I don't have a complete picture, but the picture of Ibn Abdul Hadi he's a great Hanbali scholar and he's a great scholar in general. But he's not like of those Jibal, He's not like super amazing. Wallahu A'lam. Um, so let's have a look, inshallah, in the ilal of Ibn Abi Hatim. Excuse me, in the ilal of Daraqutni, see if we'll find anything else. Okay. So also in this previous hadith, if we go back to it, um, it doesn't really give us a definition. So it says, so she says, like, I'm continually bleeding. So the Prophet says that's not period. That's called irq. That's called like a vein, meaning some other kind of cause of bleeding. And it's not menstruation at all. So it says when your period comes, like, what do you mean by that then? How would you know what your period is? So he says when your period comes, then leave the prayer. When your period goes, then wash off the blood and pray. So there's no definition there of what the period is, though. Is it what her period normally is? Is there other signs, etc.? So then he says, next hadith, he says, حدثنا يعقوب بن إبراهيم الدورقي قال حدث عبد الرحمن بن مهدي عن صخر بن جويرية عن نافع عن سليمان بن يسار أنه حدثه رجل, right, unknown man, عن أم سلمة أن امرأة كانت تهراق or تهراق, right, you can say both, تهراق or تهراق, right, this ha is just زائدة, تراق, from أراق يريق, to spill, دما لا يفتر عنها, it wouldn't stop. فسألت أم سلمة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال لتنظر عدة الأيام والليالي التي كانت تحيض, so go by her habit, تحيض قبل ذلك وعددهن فلتترك الصلاة قدر ذلك ثم إذا حضرت الصلاة فلتغتسل ولتستنثر بثوب وتصلي. Now the issue is, why is there a yeah there? So, okay, we'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, let's look at the fiqh. The fiqh here. So here it's saying you go by habit, right? And this is the position, I believe, of the Hanafis and I believe the Malikis as well, is that we go by habit, right? So look at your habit. So, right, for the Shafis, we're going to say, aha, yes, if it's indistinguishable, like she's just bleeding, there's no way you can distinguish anything. She's going to go by habit. Otherwise, we're going to go by tamyiz. We're going to say, oh, did you notice that it was really dark at this time? It was light at this time. It was really heavy at this time, etc., etc., etc. Here, the thought of this hadith is no, you go by habit. What was her habit? What was it last time? And then it says, التي كانت تحيض. So that's the zahir of this is takrar, right? So even in the Shafi school, we have the issue is what if it was, what if she has to go by ada, right? Do we go by just the last occurrence or do we go by the last 3 occurrences? And what if there was 3 occurrences and then it changes? So there are actually scenarios where that comes up. right? Because it says كانت تحيض, that she used to, not that she menstruated once necessarily, right? What if it's her first period as well? So her first period went for 2 months. So then there's no ada. What's she gonna do? Um, Khair. So anyway, so that's the issue there. Do you go by the norm or do you go by um, uh, something else? And then it says فلتترك الصلاة قدر ذلك ثم إذا حضرت الصلاة فلتغتسل. So she has to make ghusl obviously at the end of her actual period. وَلْتَسْتَنْثِرْ, and she's going to pad herself up as much as possible. بِثَوْبٍ, with some kind of cloth, right? So the same kind of scenario, somebody who's incontinent, urine's always coming out of them. What do? They do the same thing, right? Albeit they don't have to make ghusl, right? So they go to the bathroom, they wash, they pad, and they pray. بِثَوْبٍ. So here is, again, the idea that الضرورات تقدر بقدرها. So she's in a situation of darura. She's being told to pray while najasa is coming out of her. So fine. So you say, oh, how am I going to pray? Say, okay, pray, but reduce the harm as much as possible, right? الضرورات تقدر بقدرها فمن اضطر غير باغ ولا عاد. Whoever is forced to eat the haram, he doesn't want to eat it, and he doesn't go beyond the limits, right? So الضرورات تقدر بقدرها, to the actual extent. So if you can reduce the filth, do that, right? If you can reduce the problem, then do that. Somebody in the Shafi school, we say, what if somebody had issue of let's say urine or flatulence, for example, and if they sat down, nothing would come out. So if I go to sujood, najasa will come out, but if I just sit down, nothing will come out. So you pray sitting down then. Just don't lean forward into sujood, right? Because you're trying to reduce the harm as much as possible. Right? Okay, and it says وَتُصَلِّي with a ya. So this is a lugha, right? You say things like lam yarda with an alif, lam yad'u with a waw, right? It is a lugha, a lughaya, it is a dialect, right? But the default is this is just a mistake, right? So you might find this hadith elsewhere. Or is it 113? It says it's in Abu Dawood, Nasa'i, and Tirmidhi, and sorry, Ibn Majah. You might find this hadith somewhere else and it doesn't have that yet. Right? So we don't have to bend over backwards and say, oh, it's this dialect, that dialect. You can just say it's a mistake, right? So if you're speaking to a woman and you say, Anti lam tusalli, that's correct, because it's originally lam tusallina, right? But here we're talking about a woman, right? Sallat, hiya tusalli, lam tusalli, with a kasra, no ya, right? Hiya lam tad'u, lam tarda, right? So there shouldn't be the ya there. Wallahu a'lam. It's majzoo. قال أبو محمد وهكذا قال موسى بن عقبة والليث بن سعد عن نافع عن سليمان. So this is Musa ibn Uqba, the author of the Seerah, right? It's available now. You can get the Seerah of Musa ibn Uqba. It's in English as well. عن سليمان عن رجل عن أم سلمة وقال مالك وعبيد الله. This is Ubaidullah ibn Abdullah. Ubaidullah ibn Abdullah, I can't remember who it is. He comes up a lot in the Muwatta. Ubaidullah ibn Abdullah ibn Uqba, something like that. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Ansari, وغيرهم. So I believe Musa ibn Uqba is Madani, right? Allahu Akbar, but certainly these are all Madaniyin. عن نافع عن سليمان عن أم سلمة, i.e. there's no man in between. وقال أيوب عن سليمان نفسه عن أم سلمة. So Ayyub al-Sakhtiyani narrates direct from Sulaiman ibn Yasar. So the point is, in Malik's version, Yahya ibn Sa'id's version, there's no man in between. right? Whereas in Layth ibn Sa'ad's version and Musa ibn Uqba, there's this man in between, an unknown man, right? So which would make the hadith weak. Allahu a'lam. So can Imam Malik make a mistake? Yes. Is it likely? No, but he can, right? حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف الدمشقي قال حدثنا بكر بن مضر قال حدثنا جعفر بن ربيعة عن عراك عن عروة عن عائشة قالت إن أم حبيبة بنت جحش التي كانت تحت عبد الرحمن بن عوف شكت إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الدم فقال لها امكثي قدر ما كانت تحبسك حيضتك ثم اغتسلي. Right. قالت وكانت تغتسل عند كل صلاة. So i.e., so she said, here the Prophet is telling her, go by your norm, right? And then it says, she voluntarily, of her own accord, when she was having excessive bleeding, she would make ghusl for every single prayer. Is that obligatory? No. But that's what she would do. حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا أبو معمر قال حدثنا عبد الوارث قال حدثنا الحسين المعلم عن يحيى بن أبي كثير عن أبي سلمة. So this is ibn عبد الرحمن ibn عوف قال أخبرتني زينب بنت أم سلمة أن امرأة كانت تهراق الدم وكانت تحت عبد الرحمن بن عوف أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أمرها أن تغتسل عند كل صلاة وتصلي. Right. So here there is a and tusalliya. So here it says that the Prophet told her to make ghusl every single time she prayed. ورواه معمر وهشام فقال عن يحيى عن أم سلمة أن أم حبيبة. Okay, so here's this narration. We all agree nobody acts upon this. So, right. So this again goes back to the question, who has monopoly over revelation? The fuqaha or the muhaddithin? So let's assume this hadith is sahih. Okay. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أمرها أن تغتسل عند كل صلاة ليس عليه الفتوى, right? So nobody does that. Wallahu a'lam. For obvious reasons, right? Why obvious reasons? You make ghusl when your period ends, right? So you're going to say her period's ended or not. If her period has ended, then now she's going to pray. She's not going to pray if your period hasn't ended, right? Okay, so it says حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا عبيد الله بن موسى عن شيبان عن يحيى عن أبي سلمة عن أم أبي بكر أنها أخبرته أن عائشة قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في المرأة ترى ما يريبها بعد الطهر قال إنما هي عرق أو عروق. Right, so the issue is uh, uh, after the tuhur. So here is, let's assume that it's now past 15 days from the beginning of her period, right? So in the middle of her tuhur, she sees something. So the Prophet said this is, just ignore it. Why? Because it's a condition for blood to count as period that it has to fit within that 15 days or those 10 days for the Hanafis. And so it's something else. Okay, well, what if it was her habit? Okay, she normally has 6 days, 6 to 7 days. Okay, so then on day 7, she had made ghusl. And on day 10, she saw blood. Right? So the Shafis, we would say, it doesn't matter what her ada is, that's period. That means you've actually been on your period that whole time. Right? As opposed to, it's now past 15 days from the beginning of your period, in which case this cannot be a period. Right? حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا عبيد الله بن موسى قال حدثنا إسرائيل عن إبراهيم بن مهاجر عن صفية بنت شيبة عن عائشة قالت سألت امرأة من الأنصار النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن الحائض إذا أرادت أن تغتسل من المحيض قال خذي ماءك وصدرك ثم اغتسلي فأنقي أي make sure you're very clean ثم صبي على رأسك حتى تبلغي شؤون right شؤون الرأس the عظام الرأس right so sha'n is um, the sha'n means the courseways in something right? So the shu'un of the face are the lines that tears make down your face. That's called shu'un al-wajh, right? So something is sha'an, it's like it's a significant kind of like cut in a valley. So shu'un, sha'an. ثم خذي فرصة ممسكة. Then take a firsa, means a piece of cotton or a piece of cloth that has musk on it. So she understands, take some water, take some sidr, some cedar wood. It's like a detergent. Clean yourself and clean yourself properly and pour water on your head and make sure the water gets into the roots of your hair. And then take a piece of cloth or cotton with musk. So she didn't understand what that was. فقالت كيف أصنع? So I'm sorry. فسكت, the Prophet was silent. ثم قالت كيف أصنع? So I don't understand. فسكت فقالت عائشة خذي فرصة ممسكة فتتبعي بها أثر الدم ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يسمع فما أنكر عليها. Right? Other versions mention that he says Subhanallah, meaning like I'm not going to tell you to put something next to your private. I'm not going to say your private parts to you, right? And subhanallah, so it's important that we understand that there's this fine line, right, between blameworthy haya and blameworthy lack of haya, right? So, you know, somebody, for example, they have a question. You have to ask the question, right? You know, نعمة النساء أو نساء الأنصار لم يمنعهن الحياء أن يتفقهن في الدين, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, what wonderful women are the women of the Ansar. Haya did not stop them from learning fiqh fi din. So it's too awkward, so he didn't ask the question. It's too awkward, so I didn't explain to my daughter what a period was, and now she's 16, right? And she's been praying and fasting the whole time, right? And this happens. Like you're teaching Quran in a masjid. It's like this girl is like 14. It's like, why is this girl here every single day? And you go and ask because she doesn't know anything about period or anything. Like, what's the, it's kind of silly, right? These kind of things happen, right? On the other side, then, is people ask questions, you know? Like I remember, for myself, so I was like, I'm teaching a kind of a somewhat public class. And the sister's like, oh, Sheikh, is oral sex halal? I'm like, Habibti, like, like you can ask indirectly, It's a bit kind of like, you're like, you can, so the point is, you can ask without being like so frank, So don't be the side where I can't ask that question, but it could be in another way, right? You can ask indirectly. There's lots of indirect ways to ask things. Um, um, it doesn't have to be, Another issue is, for example, she was too shy to propose. Is it halal for a woman to propose to a man? She can do that, right? Right? She can do that. Like, that's not like, it's not haram. It's like, oh my God, I didn't know what to do. I had nobody to ask him, so I was like, just send the guy an email, say I don't mean to be rude, and it's fine. Or even sit him down and say, brother, do you mind? I'd like to talk to you privately about something. And be like, okay. And then she asked that question. That's not qillat hayat. Like, that's not a lack of hayat, right? That's okay. You can do that. um, so the issue is somewhere in between, basically. There's certain things that you don't have to be so frank, subhanAllah. Maybe I'm just English. Am I just English? We're too proper. I don't think I'm too English, is it? Yeah, but there's certain things like you don't have to do that, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I right or wrong? some sister comes up to you, or some a sister just she became Muslim. She's like, "Oh, Yusuf, could I ask a question?" Like, sure. Is oral sex halal? I was like, did you really have to ask me? There's no sisters to ask, or you couldn't ask me indirectly, you know? Like, am I yeah? So it's like there's the arf is like off, you know? Am I extreme or not? Am I oversensitive or something?
No, I think it definitely makes sense. My question was just more in general because I know in some, especially like the Deobandi Madaris circles, their level is even higher to the point where, they might consider it to be inappropriate even for like
Yeah.
the sister to directly ask a question at all, and that she would just submit like a slip and someone would read the slip or something.
Right, right. Yeah, but the thing is, the point is, so let's say as a Deobandi, did you achieve the goal through? So did you? So the issue is, I'm not going to ask the question because it's too awkward. That's wrong. But let's say the situation where the sisters can ask any questions indirectly. So for example, it's like this. Here's these sisters. You never hear a sister's voice ever. Okay, but the sisters are always asking questions, and then basically at the end of at 5 times a day, for example, there's an envelope put under the mufti's door, and then the mufti answers these questions on a WhatsApp group. Done. You know. So like I don't have any problem with that. The problem is you can't even ask that question. So like my wife's Afghan, right? She talks about like Afghanistan. Like in Afghanistan, like the women generally don't know the deen. Period. Like there'll be like situations like this, like women don't pray because it's kind of like or it's a kind of insane, where they're like treated as if they're not even there. Like so their husband will go to the masjid and the husband but they don't even pray, and they don't know even the basics of the deen because it will be inappropriate for her to leave the house or inappropriate for her to ask, So the issue of, oh, that's qillat hayat because you spoke, is like, well, as long as I get the job done, I can be as hidden as possible. That's great, right? I can be as hidden as possible as a woman as long as I can get the job done. What it shouldn't be is you can't get the job done. Like this question isn't being asked, right? Or for example, between husband and wife, right? So that you're talking to this guy, and he's like, you're talking to him about he's got some problems, da, 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 and then he's like, oh, I'm not really sure if my wife actually like reaches orgasm during intercourse. He's like, you don't know that. So I don't know. Do women even have an orgasm? Like, are you joking? So like you have so much haya in your marriage that something that's actually really important to the marriage is not discussable. Like you can't even talk about that, you know? So to the extent where there's actual genuine harm, right? That's where it's like ridiculous. But it can be ridiculously, it can be very different. It could be like, okay, like in this society, women don't leave the house. In this society, women never are heard in public. But at the end of the day, she can buy, she can sell, she can complain, she can get her rights. Alhamdulillah, fantastic. The problem when it's like she can't get her rights. She's not able to get an answer. She's not able to assert herself. She's like, no, I'm being financially wronged. I want my money. And it's like, oh, it's rude for her to leave the house. It's rude for her to raise a case against her husband. It's like, no, it's not. There's a Jew raising a case against Sayyidina Ali. Who are you to say a woman cannot raise a case against her husband? Does that make sense? Yeah. And then there's a lot of things like this, just not, it's like, it's just not, it's not haya. It's just like, it's weird. Um, Wallahu a'lam. um, I'll give you another example, right? A sister talking her about unnecessary details about her own period. So like, Sheikh, so I'm on my period right now, and can I go to the masjid? It's like, why did you need to tell me that you're on your period right now? You know, you can just come and ask me the question, say, Sheikh, if a woman is on her period, can't you go to masjid? Say, oh, my period just started yesterday, and it's like, you don't need to tell me that. you know That's like saying, for example, and again, maybe it's just some English. I'm like, if I go up to if I go up to a brother, I'm like, oh my God. They're like, what's wrong? Dude, I was at this restaurant yesterday. I've had diarrhea for like the last like I've been to the bathroom like 20 times since I went there. It's like, Habibi, did you need to tell me that? Did you need to say like I have diarrhea? Like is that necessary? You know? You could just say, "Oh man, I'm really not. How are you doing? That's just make dua. I'm like, I'm really not well. I've been to the, I've had problems. You can just say, I've had problems. You don't have to say, oh, dude, I've been to the bathroom like 50,000 times, and that bathroom stinks. Like, why did you tell me? You know, like, why did you even tell me that? So that's like, like, what is the edit when you go to the bathroom? Like, you cover your head. Why? Haya and min Allah, right? So now you're gonna come and tell me, like, everything. It's kind of like it's just weird. They're like, oh, is it haram? It's like, I'm not saying that it's haram. I'm just saying that like, why are you telling me this? Right? It's like it's just you just go weird. Um, yeah, yeah. So there are differences, right? There are differences. People can be different, but there's a certain amount. It's like, why did you even share that? Right? Why did you even share that? You know, does that make sense?
Yes.
Um, but again, it should not be the point where the goal cannot be achieved. Right? The goal cannot be achieved. That's the issue there. Wallahu a'lam. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he was shy. He was like, I can't say, oh yeah, because there's a smell of blood from your private parts. He didn't want to say that, right? So the other narration mentions he like said, Subhanallah. He went red in the face. He's like saying Subhanallah because it was awkward for him, and that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing, right? People talking while in the bathroom. They're like, why is it haram? It's like, Habibi, it's like this gross, right? You're on the phone while relieving yourself, and everybody can hear you outside the bathroom stall. That's like super gross, right? Um, so it's like you have no haya. They're like, what's that? Like, is it sinful? I think I don't watch. Is it Family Guy? And I haven't watched it. I just saw this like clip of it on YouTube about um um I don't know what the guy's name is in Family Guy, but he becomes Muslim or something like that, or he's acting as a Muslim for a bit. And there's this Arab guy, and he says like something like this: it's like, I'm going to utterly embarrass myself by going to the bathroom. So they're kind of like making joke of this idea that like for like Muslims, it's almost like traumatic, you know, traumatic to go to the bathroom, and it's kind of like chill out basically. And so yeah, but the other side of it is like it's like really weird, you don't really care. So and then also Muslims sharing details, right? The Prophet, Prophet strongly forbade that, sharing details what happens between husband and wife, right? So that's going to be, that's a huge, huge haq. Like, subhanAllah, they don't mention this in fiqh books, right? When they talk about marriage, but like one of the biggest huquq that you have over your spouse, even after, even if it all goes wrong, right, with the divorce, is privacy. Like that's super, super important, right? So you go and start talking about things that happen between you and your wife, or you and your husband with other people for a non-absolute necessity, or you share things that aren't 100% important. It's like, subhanallah, judgment day, may Allah ya'ainak, may Allah protect you. Because it's just like you could do so much harm, you can do so much harm. And it's just there, and you can just like at the roll of a dice, just like say something. My husband's like this, my wife's like this, and it's like, what are you doing, Habibi? You know. So that's haya, but that's not that we're now beyond haya. It's like an issue of like you have no sense of people's privacy whatsoever, right? And how grave that is that you just abuse that power that you have. You're privy to certain information that nobody else is privy to, you know, and it's like you just totally destroy somebody, and you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. They're just sensitive. It's like, well, see you on Judgment Day, Habibi. May Allah protect us. Khair. We got to stop here, inshallah ta'ala. Let's just quickly finish this. So it says, حدثنا محمد بن يحيى قال حدثنا محمد بن يوسف قال حدثنا سفيان عن يونس بن عبيد عن الحسن عن عثمان بن أبي العاص. So the years just dropped here. أنه كان لا يقرب, right? قارب يقرب فكان قريبا, to be close. قارب يقرب, right? فكان قريبا, that's to be close. قارب يقرب, to get close to something, to approximate, right? So it's لازم when it's يقرب. قارب يقرب, قريب, right? And what was it called? As opposed to قارب يقرب, to approximate, to get close. كان لا يقرب النساء 40 يوما, يعني في النفاس. Used to wait for 40 days. حدثنا زياد بن أيوب قال حدثنا هشيم الدستوائي عن أبي بشر عن يوسف بن ماحك, that's probably a non-Arab name, عن ابن عباس قال تمسك النفساء عن الصلاة 40 يوما. حدثنا ابن مقرئ ومحمود بن آدم قال حدثنا سفيان عن هشام بن عروة عن فاطمة بنت المنذر عن جدتها أسماء. This is أسماء. I think this is أسماء بنت أبي بكر, I'm pretty sure. So that would mean that basically Urwa is married to his cousin or something like that, I think. So maybe I'm not sure, but I think. أن امرأة سألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن الثوب يصيبها دم الحيضة قال حتيه, scratch it, وقرصيه, scratch it, ورشي بالماء وصلي, and put water on it and then wash it and then pray in it. So what's the issue is that basically there's actually blood on it. So here is this item of clothing, it has blood on it, and the blood stain does not come out. So what do? In the Shafi school, we call this like second level or third level najasa. Najasa doesn't come out. So you can't get the color out, or you can't get the smell out, for example. So what do? You just scrub it, right? And you scrub it and wash it 3 times. It doesn't come out, khalas, it's over. It's considered pure, right? It's considered pure. If just the color is there or just the smell, right? It's considered pure. Now, this ikhtilaf in the late scholars, do you have to use soap or not? Do you have to use the detergent? But here it doesn't mention those two. It just mentions huttihi wa qursihi, like you just scrubbed it. I scrubbed it, the blood still doesn't come out. Okay, khalas. What are you going to do about it? Throw your clothes away, right? So you have a vomit stain, blood stain, something like that. خير إن شاء الله. We'll stop here. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.